The sun was beginning to set in Brooksville, painting the sky with shades of orange and gold that reflected off the calm ocean waters. Andrew Miller stood on the balcony of his suite on the top floor of the luxurious beachfront hotel his family had built. He gazed at the serene beauty before him, but inside he felt completely disconnected. The splendor of the place, his successful career, the millions in his bank account, none of it brought the comfort he had once found in the arms of Elisa, his late wife. Since her death, everything had felt hollow. Andrew knew he was surrounded by people who only stayed by his side because of his wealth. Advisors, executives, even friends were all part of a game of interests he had grown tired of. His only memory of true love was Elisa, and with her loss, life had turned into an automatic routine. Determined to change this, Andrew made a bold decision. He would leave behind Andrew Miller, the hotel magnate, and become Andy, a simple man, ready to discover a new way of living. Brooksville was the perfect town for his transformation. Small, quiet, and far from the spotlight, the hotel there felt like a world apart. Andrew would use this to his advantage. Under the name Andy, he would take on the job of a maintenance worker, a modest role that would allow him to see the hotel's day-to-day operations from a completely different perspective. He wanted to know what life was like without the weight of wealth, without the superficiality of appearances. And maybe in this new role, he could find what had truly been missing in his life. The next day, dressed in simple, worn-out clothes, Andrew entered the hotel through the back door. It was strange to walk through the service areas, places he had only seen from a distance. The noisy machines, worn-down walls, tools, and narrow hallways felt like a parallel world to what he was used to. No one would recognize him, and that brought him unexpected relief. "Excuse me," he said, spotting a young woman in an apron standing by the reception desk. Her large brown eyes looked at him curiously. "I'm Andy. I've been hired to work maintenance here." Ava Anderson, the front desk manager, gave him a slight smile. She seemed tired, but there was something in her expression that suggested unshakable determination. "Welcome, Andy. It's good to have you here," she said, shaking his hand. "Mr. Jenkins, the head of maintenance, is waiting for you in the machine room. I'll take you there." As they walked through the hallways, Andrew noticed how attentive Ava was to the details, greeting employees by name and resolving small issues along the way. He didn't know much about her beyond her position, but something set her apart from other managers he had known. She seemed to genuinely care about the place and the people working there. "The work here is intense," Ava commented, glancing sideways at him. "Hotel maintenance never ends, but if you need help, we're all around." "Thanks," Andrew replied, a little surprised by her kindness. The two arrived at the machine room, where Mr. Jenkins was already waiting for him. Andrew quickly introduced himself, and after a few brief instructions, he was put to work, starting his first day on the job just like any other employee. Simple tasks, like fixing a leaky faucet or adjusting the air conditioning, seemed to have a therapeutic effect on him. Each screw he tightened, each hammer blow he delivered, it was as if he was reconnecting with something he didn't know he had been missing. Meanwhile, Ava watched him from a distance, unaware that the humble man in front of her was actually her boss. She noticed he was dedicated and humble, two qualities she admired in people and that were rare to find in that kind of environment. After a long day of work, Andrew sat on a wooden bench outside the hotel, exhausted but strangely content. Ava, who was also finishing her shift, passed by. "You did a good job today," she commented, giving him an encouraging smile. "Thanks," he said, smiling back, unsure of how to respond to the compliment. "Tomorrow will be harder," she teased before saying goodbye and heading toward the exit. Andrew watched as she walked away. He felt an unexpected connection to this young woman, something he hadn't felt in a long time. She seemed authentic, someone who lived life with honesty and strength despite the challenges. It was as if Ava embodied the simplicity he had been searching for. Little did he know that what had started as a simple disguise was about to turn into something much deeper and more challenging. And as his feelings for Ava grew, he also wondered how long he could maintain the lie he was building. The next morning, Andrew woke up before dawn. The simple room he had reserved for himself, far from the luxurious suites, was a modest reminder of his mission. Without the comfort of his previous lifestyle, he felt closer to what he was seeking, a life without the pressures and superficiality of wealth. He once again put on the maintenance uniform, the worn-out clothes that made him invisible to the guests and most employees' eyes. As he left the room, he encountered the morning bustle of the hotel. Employees were already moving, preparing everything for the guests who would soon wake up. Andrew walked through the lobby when he saw Ava at the reception desk, caught up in an animated discussion with two staff members about a reservation that had been mismanaged. The calmness and firmness with which she handled the situation caught his attention. He quickly passed by without being noticed and headed to the maintenance area, where Mr. Jenkins was already waiting with the day's task list. Among the items were some repairs in the guest areas and adjustments to parts of the hotel's central heating system. Andrew grabbed his tools and made his way through the corridors, ready for another day of work, while he was focused on a plumbing repair in the hotel restaurant. The door opened and Ava walked in, looking tired but relieved to see that he was there. "Andy, I'm so glad I found you," she said, crossing her arms like someone bearing the weight of countless responsibilities. "Sorry to interrupt, but could you help me with something? The conference room's AC broke again, and we've got a big group coming in a few hours." Andrew wiped his hands and smiled, trying to mask the growing nervousness that always crept up when he was near Ava. He still didn't quite understand why her presence affected him so much, but he couldn't deny the urge to help her whenever he could. "Of course, I can take a look right now," he replied, grabbing his tools. They walked together through the corridors as Ava explained the issues she was dealing with. Andrew listened silently, absorbing not only her words, but also the tone of her voice, the determination hidden beneath the fatigue. He wondered how she managed to keep everything under control, running the hotel while also dealing with the difficult family situation he knew about. "You seem to handle challenges pretty well," Andrew commented as they entered the conference room. "It's not always easy," Ava admitted with a sigh. "But someone's got to keep things running, right?" He paused for a moment, looking at her more closely. The calm facade Ava usually maintained was beginning to crack in front of him. Maybe, behind all that professionalism and dedication, there was a woman tired of fighting alone. Just like he felt weary from carrying the burden of a life filled with falsehood. But before he could ask her more, Ava shifted the focus. "Here's the air unit," she said, pointing to the large metal box on the wall. Andrew immediately got to work, using his tools to take apart part of the system and find the issue. As he made adjustments, Ava stayed nearby, watching in silence. The closeness of the two in that small space made Andrew's thoughts wander to how much his life had changed since he decided to go undercover. Just a few days ago, he would never have imagined being on his knees fixing the AC in his own hotel instead of attending a business meeting in some luxurious place. But now, he felt more connected to the world, and especially to the people around him. "You know, you're different from the other employees who've started here," Ava said unexpectedly, breaking the silence. Andrew looked up at her, trying to hide his apprehension. Different? Had she noticed something? Or was he revealing more than he should? "What do you mean?" he asked, trying to stay calm. "Well, I can't quite explain it." Ava hesitated, seeming to search for the right words. "You seem more determined, like you've been through a lot before coming here." Andrew chuckled, relieved that it wasn't anything more suspicious, but at the same time, he couldn't help reflecting on her comment. Ava had no idea that he really had been through more than she could ever imagine. The pressure of managing an empire, the pain of losing the love of his life, and the constant loneliness despite being surrounded by people. "I guess we all have our battles, don't we?" he replied vaguely, returning to the repair. Ava fell silent, but Andrew could feel the melancholy in her eyes. She was carrying something heavy, something personal, and he wished he could ask her more about it. Yet he knew it would be dangerous to get too involved, especially knowing that he was lying about who he really was. When the repair was done, Andrew stood up, wiping the sweat from his forehead. He switched on the AC, and soon they both felt the cool air filling the room. Ava smiled, genuinely grateful. "You just saved my day," she said, her eyes bright with relief. "Thank you, Andy. That's what I'm here for," he replied, trying not to show how much those words affected him. The simple act of helping her and seeing her gratitude was something he hadn't expected to find when he took on this disguise. As they left the room, Andrew knew that the connection between them was growing, even if neither of them spoke openly about it. With each passing day, he felt himself getting closer to Ava, not just as an employee, but as someone who shared the same struggles and longings as she did. However, with that growing closeness, the weight of his lie also increased. How could he keep pretending to be someone he wasn't while his feelings for Ava only intensified? And more importantly, how long could he hide his true identity before the truth came out? The following days were a blur of tasks and quick conversations between Andrew and Ava. He was becoming more and more involved in the hotel's routine, fixing whatever needed attention and always being available to help. While working, Andrew often found himself watching Ava more than he cared to admit. Every smile she gave to a guest, every thoughtful gesture toward the staff, only deepened his admiration for her. She seemed to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders, yet still managed to make everyone around her feel cared for. One afternoon, Andrew was finishing up a repair in the laundry room when he overheard a conversation behind one of the washing machines. He recognized Abigail's voice, the hotel's chef, and another male voice he quickly associated with Noah, Ava's younger brother. Curious, Andrew stayed quiet, slowly tightening some screws so as not to interrupt. "I've told you, Noah. You've got to get out of this." Abigail spoke with a quiet but firm urgency. "Ava's worried about you. This isn't going to end well." "I know." Noah's voice was low, almost defeated. "But it's not that simple. I owe them money. If I bail now, not just me, but Ava too will be in danger." Andrew felt his stomach tighten. Noah's words weren't a complete shock, since Ava had told him her brother was involved with the wrong crowd. But hearing the gravity of the situation up close hit him hard. He knew how cruel the world could be, especially to those who didn't have the resources to protect themselves. His desire to help grew stronger by the second. Abigail sighed, her frustration evident. "Noah, I understand you're in a tough spot, but there has to be another way. Ava is doing everything she can to protect you, and you need to return the favor. She's already lost so much." Before the conversation could continue, Andrew decided it was best not to get involved at that moment. He quickly finished the repair and slipped out unnoticed. His mind was racing. Andrew found himself reflecting on how he could help Noah and Ava without revealing his true identity. Maybe he could intervene somehow, pay off the boys' debts anonymously, but at the same time, he knew that would raise suspicions. What if Ava wondered where the money had come from? That night, Andrew was sitting in the small-town restaurant, the Brooksville Diner, trying to push those thoughts away. He often went there after work, enjoying the anonymity and being treated like just another regular customer. The place was cozy, with walls covered in old photos of the town and warm yellow lights that gave a sense of comfort. He was sipping on a coffee when the door opened, and Ava walked in, looking exhausted after another long shift at the hotel. She noticed Andrew sitting there and smiled as she walked over to him. "Hey, Andy. Mind if I join you?" she asked, relieved to see a familiar face. "Of course," he replied, moving his coffee cup aside. "Looks like you had a long day." "Long doesn't even begin to cover it," Ava said with a sigh. "But nothing a cup of coffee and a few minutes of rest can't fix." She ordered her coffee, and for a few moments, they sat in silence, both appreciating the calm atmosphere of the diner. Andrew could feel the tension in her, the exhaustion building up, and once again, the urge to help her flooded his thoughts. "Ava, can I ask you something?" Andrew began, trying to keep the worry out of his voice. "I heard about your brother, Noah. Is he doing okay?" Ava looked up at him, surprised. She hadn't expected Andrew to know about Noah. Still, his calm and sincere demeanor made her lower her guard a little. "He's going through a rough time," she admitted, stirring her fresh cup of coffee. "Noah's gotten into some trouble, and I don't know what to do to get him out of it. I know it's not my place, but if you ever need help, I'm around," Andrew offered, feeling like he needed to do something, though he wasn't sure how she would react. Ava smiled, though there was sadness in her eyes. "Thank you, Andy. You're a good man, but this is a complicated situation. I just don't want Noah to get hurt. He's a good kid. He's just lost his way a bit." Andrew felt the weight of her words. It was clear that Ava carried a deep worry for her brother, and more than that, she was wearing herself out trying to keep everything under control. The hotel job, caring for their sick mother, and now the looming danger Noah was facing. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, but the connection between them seemed to grow stronger with every word. Andrew felt more and more drawn to Ava, even though he knew his secret was lurking, like a shadow ready to ruin any chance of a future with her. As the night wore on and Ava prepared to leave, he knew he needed to figure out how to help her without exposing his true identity. Later that night, back in his modest hotel room, Andrew lay awake, turning over the possibilities in his mind. He was no longer questioning if he should help Noah, but rather how to do it. He had the resources, the power, and the connections to solve the boy's problem. But any wrong move could reveal who he really was to Ava, and he couldn't bear the thought of losing her before he even truly had her in his life. But the more his feelings for Ava deepened, the more he knew this lie couldn't continue forever. Sooner or later, the truth would come out. And the one question Andrew couldn't answer was, what would happen when it did? As the days passed, Andrew became more and more integrated into the routine of the hotel. Working in maintenance gave him a deeper view of what went on behind the scenes, not just with the building's systems and repairs, but with the lives of the people who worked there. He started getting to know the other employees better, including Abigail, the hotel's chef, who was a reserved but efficient woman. Abigail always seemed to watch him with a hint of suspicion, as if she sensed that he wasn't exactly who he appeared to be. though she never confronted him directly. One afternoon, while Andrew was working on one of the boilers in the basement, Ava appeared in the doorway, wearing an expression he hadn't seen before. Serious and tense. "Andy, I need a favor." "A big favor," she said, crossing her arms and leaning slightly against the door. Andrew set down his tools and stepped closer, already concerned by the tone in her voice. "Of course, Ava. What's going on?" "It's about Noah," she began, clearly hesitant to share the details. "He's in more trouble, big trouble this time. I don't know what to do, and I'm scared things are going to get worse. I'm desperate." Andrew felt a knot in his stomach. He had suspected that Noah's situation wasn't improving, but seeing Ava so shaken made him realize the problem was much bigger than he had imagined. Noah had gotten involved with a dangerous local gang, and the debts he had racked up with them weren't going to be forgiven easily. "What exactly happened?" Andrew asked, trying to stay calm, even though every new piece of information only heightened his concern. Ava took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "The gang he owes money to threatened him. They said if he doesn't pay, they'll come after me and our mother. I have no way of getting the money they're asking for, and Noah is getting more and more anxious. I've tried everything to pull him out of this, but he seems trapped, with no way out." Ava's vulnerability in her voice hit Andrew hard. He could clearly see how exhausted she was, trying to protect her brother, support the household, care for her sick mother, and still be flawless at work. The weight she carried was immense, and all Andrew wanted in that moment was to relieve her of part of that burden. However, the biggest obstacle he faced was the secret he continued to keep. He had the power to resolve Noah's problem with a simple check, but that would mean revealing his true identity, something he wasn't ready to do yet. "I don't know how, but I'll find a way to help you, Ava," Andrew said sincerely. She looked into his eyes, surprised and moved by the unexpected promise. I don't even know what to say. Just you listening already helps me a lot. I feel so alone in all of this," she confessed, her eyes beginning to well up with tears. Andrew took a step forward, feeling the urge to comfort her somehow. He wanted to hug her, promise that everything would be okay, but he knew that words wouldn't be enough. Ava needed actions, something concrete that could really drive away the danger looming over her family. "You're not alone, Ava," he murmured, his tone serious and firm. "I'll do whatever it takes to keep you and Noah safe." Ava nodded, grateful, and for a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of the situation hanging in the air. She then said goodbye, returning to work, while Andrew stood there for a while, reflecting on the promise he had just made. That night, Andrew made a decision. No matter what it took, he would find a way to pay off Noah's debts without revealing his true identity. The idea of losing Ava, either to the dangers the gang posed or because of the lie he was entangled in, haunted him. Ava was more than just a dedicated manager or colleague. She was the person who, without knowing it, had reignited a spark of life in him, a sense of purpose he hadn't felt since Elisa's death. The following days became a race against time. Andrew spent hours in his secret office, trying to discreetly use his connections. He needed to find a way to transfer the money to Noah's gang without raising any suspicions. Not from Ava, not from anyone. At the same time, he continued working on maintenance, keeping up his Andy persona, but the pressure was starting to weigh on him. It was then that Abigail, with her ever-watchful eye, began to notice something different. One afternoon, as Andrew finished repairing the heating system near the kitchen, Abigail approached. She wasn't the type to talk much, but her eyes always seemed to catch more than others realized. "Andy," she said, casually but with a serious tone, "you're hiding something, aren't you?" Andrew froze for a second, but quickly masked it. "What do you mean?" he asked, trying to sound carefree. Abigail sighed, looking at him with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. "I know it's none of my business, but you're not like the other employees. Something about you doesn't add up, and it's not just because you're good at your job. It's like you're hiding from something, or someone." Andrew swallowed hard. He knew Abigail was perceptive, but he hadn't expected her to confront him so directly. He needed to think fast. "I'm just trying to do my job," he replied with a slight smile, trying to shift the subject, like everyone here. Abigail observed him for a few more seconds, as if trying to solve an invisible puzzle. "All right, Andy," she finally said, giving up on pressing him. "But know that if you ever need help, you can count on me." Andrew nodded, relieved that she had let the topic go, but he knew that was a warning. He was treading on dangerous ground, and the more he got involved in Ava and Noah's lives, the harder it would be to keep his identity hidden. As the days passed, he finally managed to transfer the money needed to cover Noah's debts, anonymously. The transaction was completed without anyone knowing he was behind it. The problem seemed resolved, at least for now. But even with the debt paid off, Andrew knew the lie he was living continued to grow like a ticking time bomb, ready to explode. And when that happened, he feared what would be left of his connection with Ava. The following days brought a slight change in Noah's behavior. He seemed more relieved, less tense, and Ava noticed. She saw that her brother was less jittery and less worried about staying out late, which gave her a brief sigh of relief, but also a sense of unease. She didn't understand how the situation had suddenly resolved itself, since Noah hadn't mentioned anything about getting the money or negotiating with the gang. Something was off, but for now, Ava decided to just appreciate the fact that, by some miracle, the threats had stopped. Meanwhile, Andrew watched from afar, satisfied to know that Noah's financial crisis seemed to be under control. However, he also realized that this was only a temporary solution. If Noah didn't change his ways, new problems would arise, and he knew he would need to be there to help. More and more, Andrew felt his life intertwining with Ava's in an irreversible way, and it made him anxious. The more time he spent by her side, the harder it would be to reveal his true identity. That morning, while Andrew was fixing a stuck door in the hotel's main lobby, Ava approached, holding some reservation papers in one hand, and with a thoughtful look on her face. "Andy, do you have a moment?" she asked, hesitantly. "Sure, what's up?" he replied, setting down his tools and standing up. Ava glanced around, making sure no one was listening. "I wanted to thank you again for listening to me that day about Noah. He seems a little better now, and I really appreciate that you cared." Andrew felt a wave of relief and guilt at the same time. He wanted to say that he had done more than just listen, that he had solved the problem behind the scenes. But he knew he couldn't do that without revealing his true identity. "You don't need to thank me, Ava. You've done a lot for him. He just needs someone to support him, and you've been that person," Andrew said, trying to downplay the impact his own intervention had. Ava nodded, giving a shy smile. "It's hard, you know. Sometimes I feel like I'm trying to hold everything together on my own. The hotel, my mom, Noah. It's like I'm constantly on the edge of losing control." Andrew desperately wanted to offer more than words. He wanted to take that burden off her shoulders, to offer her a more secure and stable future. But he knew he couldn't do that without revealing who he really was. "You're a lot stronger than you think," he said sincerely. "But no one should have to carry everything alone." Ava looked into his eyes, and for a moment, Andrew felt a deep connection between them. It was as if she understood what he was trying to say without him having to explain. It was hard for him not to get more involved, but at the same time, the closer he got to her, the more complicated things would be when the truth came out. Before the conversation could go any deeper, the reception phone rang, breaking the moment. Ava quickly excused herself and returned to the front desk, leaving Andrew standing there, feeling the weight of his lie growing heavier. Later that day, Noah showed up at the hotel. It was rare to see him there, as he usually avoided getting involved in his sister's work environment. Andrew was outside in the courtyard, fixing a wooden fence, when he noticed the young man approaching, looking tense and grim. "Andy?" Noah called, his voice hesitant. "Can I talk to you for a second?" Andrew looked up, surprised by the serious tone, and nodded. "Sure, Noah." "What's going on?" Noah glanced around as if checking to make sure they were alone, then spoke in a low voice. "I know it's none of your business, but you seem like someone Ava trusts, so I think I can ask you this. Lately, things have changed with the gang. All of a sudden, they left me alone, like the problem disappeared, but I don't get why. I didn't pay what I owe, and they're not exactly known for being generous." Andrew's heart raced. He knew Noah was getting close to the truth, and he had no idea how to explain without raising suspicion. He needed to keep the secret, but he also didn't want to outright lie to Noah, especially now that the kid seemed to be trying to figure out what was going on. Maybe they reconsidered, or maybe they got involved in something else, Andrew suggested, trying to sound casual. Sometimes these things work themselves out. Noah didn't seem convinced, but he didn't press the issue either. He stepped back, still eyeing Andrew with suspicion. "I don't know, Andy. I just know I don't trust them. And it's weird how all this happened. And you showed up around the same time?" Noah trailed off, as if debating whether to continue. Andrew took a deep breath. He knew this was his chance to try to steer the young man away from trouble, and he would use it to his advantage. "Listen, Noah," Andrew began in a more serious tone. "What matters is that you're safe now. Use this as a chance to step away from everything that got you into this mess. Ava cares about you a lot, and she's got enough on her plate as it is. If you want, I can help you find a different path." Noah was silent for a moment, taking in the words. Andrew could see the internal struggle in him. The fear of getting into trouble again, but also the pride of wanting to handle things on his own. "Maybe I'll take that help someday, Andy," Noah said with a sigh. "But for now, I'll try to sort this out my way. Just take care of my sister, okay?" Andrew nodded, feeling a tightness in his chest. He wanted to do much more than just take care of Ava, but he knew that as long as he kept his true identity a secret, he could never be fully present for her. The conversation with Noah made him increasingly aware that this lie had an expiration date. Sooner or later, everything would come out, and what he feared more than anything was that the day it all unraveled was closer than he thought. The days passed quickly, and with each new dawn, Andrew felt his double life becoming harder to sustain. His relationship with Ava was growing naturally, but the tension from the secret was starting to weigh on him. He knew that with every conversation, with every smile shared, he was heading toward a point of no return. The bond they were building was genuine, but there was something essential he had yet to reveal, and this secret, he knew, could destroy everything. One morning, while Andrew was working on yet another electrical repair in the west wing of the hotel, Abigail appeared at his side. She had that suspicious look he had learned to recognize. "Andy," she began in her direct tone, crossing her arms over her chest, "I've been watching you. I could be wrong, but I have a feeling I don't really know who you are. And something tells me you're hiding something big." Andrew stopped what he was doing, took a deep breath, and looked at her. Abigail wasn't someone easily fooled. Always alert, she seemed to notice details that others missed. He knew he couldn't ignore her suspicions much longer, but he also wasn't ready to reveal his true identity. At least, not yet. "Abigail, I get what you're saying, but I promise, I'm not here to cause any trouble," he said calmly. "I'm just trying to help the hotel and do my job." "I know that," she replied, raising an eyebrow. "But there's something more. Ava trusts you, and so do I, but something's off. And before things get out of hand, I think you should be honest, especially with her." Andrew felt his chest tighten. The truth was getting closer, and he knew Abigail was right. He was getting too close to Ava, and the deeper he got, the more devastating the revelation would be when it finally came out. But how could he tell the truth without hurting her? How could he explain that everything she believed about him was part of a lie? "I'll think about what you said, Abigail," he replied, trying to buy more time. "I just want what's best for everyone here, especially for Ava." Abigail stared at him for another moment before sighing. "Just don't let this lie drown you, Andy, and especially not Ava." With that, she walked away, leaving Andrew alone with his thoughts. The conversation with Abigail had left him restless. The moment was fast approaching when he would have to choose: continue living the lie or finally reveal himself. But he knew that once he made that decision, there would be no turning back. Later that afternoon, Ava was in her office organizing the guest list when she heard a soft knock at the door. She looked up and smiled as Andrew entered, wiping his grease-stained hands on a rag. "Andy, what brings you here?" she asked, smiling. "I just wanted to see how you were doing after everything," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Are things calmer with Noah?" Ava nodded, sighing in relief. "Yeah, things have finally settled down. Noah seems more focused, and that's given me some peace. I don't know what happened, but it feels like that mess is behind us." Andrew felt the weight of guilt growing. He knew exactly what had happened, but he couldn't tell Ava that he had fixed everything behind the scenes. It would be just one more piece of the puzzle she'd have to figure out, or that he would have to confess at some point. Still, seeing the happiness and relief on her face made him feel, at least for now, that he had made the right choice. "That's great to hear," he replied with a smile. "You deserve some peace after all you've been through." Ava smiled back, but there was something in her eyes, something Andrew couldn't quite identify. It was as if she wanted to say something but was holding back. "Andy," she began in a more serious tone, her eyes drifting to the desk in front of her. "I've been thinking about us, about how close we've gotten since you arrived, and I feel like I'm really starting to care about you." Ava's words hit Andrew like a wave of emotions, mixed between joy and fear. It was what he had been feeling too, what had drawn him to her since the first moment they met. But at the same time, knowing she was falling for someone who didn't really exist, for a fabricated version of himself, tore him apart inside. "Ava, he began, not exactly sure what to say. He felt torn between the joy of hearing those words and the panic of the secret he was still hiding. "I know it might seem too soon," she interrupted before he could continue. "And I'm not asking you to say anything right now. I wanted you to know. I trust you, Andy, and I feel like you understand me in a way no one else does. Like we share something bigger. I don't know how to explain it. Andrew swallowed hard. The connection they shared was real. Of that he had no doubt. But she trusted him, trusted the lie he had been maintaining, and it was eating him up inside. He knew he needed to tell the truth, but the fear of losing her, of seeing her hurt and betrayed, kept him silent. I feel the same, Ava, he admitted, his throat tight. But I need to tell you something. Something important. Ava looked at him, surprised but attentive. Her expression showed a mix of expectation and concern. What is it, Andy? She asked softly. Andrew felt the weight of his words growing. He knew this was the moment, that he couldn't keep delaying it. But before he could say anything, a phone rang at the reception desk, breaking the tension, and Ava glanced at the phone with a frustrated look. I'm sorry, Andy. I have to get that, she said quickly, heading toward the desk. Andrew nodded, watching the moment slip through his fingers. As she answered the call, he stood there, his heart heavy. The moment had passed, but he knew he couldn't keep hiding the truth much longer. With each passing second, the ticking time bomb he had created was closer to exploding. Ava finished the call, returned to him, and smiled. Sorry. It was about an important reservation. Can we continue this conversation later? Andrew just nodded, knowing he wouldn't be able to avoid this talk for much longer. Sure, he said, attempting a smile. Later, he said goodbye and left the office, his heart heavy. The truth was coming to the surface, whether he was ready or not. The afternoon dragged on slowly, and every minute felt like a relentless reminder that Andrew was inching closer to the inevitable. The conversation with Ava still echoed in his mind. She trusted him, was starting to fall for him, and he felt the same way. But the truth he carried weighed more with every step he took down the hotel corridors. He couldn't keep living this lie much longer. Andrew needed time to think. He decided to leave the hotel and walk down to the beach, where the gentle waves of Brooksville's shore offered a place to reflect. The cool, late-afternoon breeze brought a calm that contrasted sharply with the storm brewing in his mind. He knew that by revealing his true identity, he risked losing Ava forever. She, who had fought so hard to survive life's hardships, might feel utterly betrayed when she found out he was the hotel owner, someone who lived with all the privileges she had never had. But the love he was beginning to feel for her was too strong to be stifled by lies. He wanted to be honest, wanted Ava to know who he truly was. Yet that desire came with a paralyzing fear, the fear that, once the truth was revealed, she would never look at him the same way again. Andrew was so lost in his thoughts that he didn't notice Noah approaching until the young man stopped beside him on the beach. Noah had a serious look, hands in his pockets, seeming deep in thought. Hey, Andy, Noah began, lightly kicking the sand. I needed to talk to you. Andrew looked at him, surprised. Their relationship had improved in recent weeks, especially since Andrew had helped resolve Noah's debts, though anonymously. Still, there was a certain distance between them. Sure, Noah, what's going on? Noah hesitated for a moment, as if struggling to find the right words. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about how things suddenly changed, and about you. You showed up at exactly the right time, and I don't know, it feels like you're more than you're letting on. Andrew's stomach tightened. Noah was dangerously close to the truth, and Andrew knew he couldn't lie to him, not anymore. But before he could respond, Noah continued. I'm not accusing you of anything. Actually, I want to thank you. You don't have to tell me what you did, but I know, somehow, you helped us. Ava hasn't realized it yet, but I know. And I owe you one, man. Andrew exhaled, relieved that Noah wasn't pressing him further about what had really happened, but the weight of the truth still bore down on him. He wanted to be completely honest with Noah, but that would mean revealing everything, about the money, about his real identity, and the fact that he wasn't just Andy working at the hotel. He was the owner. Noah gave a half smile and looked out at the horizon. I just wanted to say, thank you. You somehow made things better, and I'll try not to mess things up again. Ava's got enough problems, and I'll stay away from all that trouble. Andrew nodded, touched by the young man's sincerity. Noah, despite all the trouble he'd gotten into, had a good heart. He just needed someone to guide him, and Andrew was willing to do that, even if the cost was high. I'm glad to hear that, Noah, Andrew said sincerely. And if you need anything, you know where to find me. Noah gave a final nod before walking away, leaving Andrew alone on the beach again. That brief encounter, however short, only reinforced what Andrew already knew. He couldn't keep living this lie. He had to tell Ava the truth, even if it meant risking everything. As the sun set on the horizon, Andrew made a decision. He would go back to the hotel and talk to Ava. He could no longer put off what needed to be said. She deserved the truth, and he, no matter how much he feared her reaction, deserved to be honest with himself. When Andrew returned to the hotel, he found Ava already getting ready to end her shift. She was at the reception desk chatting with Abigail, who always had that analytical look in her eyes, as if she knew something was about to happen. Andrew hesitated for a moment before approaching, but when his eyes met Ava's, he knew there was no turning back. "Ava, can I talk to you?" he said, his voice low and serious. Ava immediately sensed that something was different. Andrew's expression wasn't the usual one. There was something urgent, something she couldn't quite figure out. "Sure, Andy. Did something happen?" she asked, with a hint of concern. Andrew quickly glanced at Abigail, who caught the signal and stepped away, giving them privacy. He then took a deep breath, preparing himself for what was to come. "We need to talk. About me. And about some things I haven't told you," he began, trying to find the right words. "I haven't been completely honest with you, and it's killing me." Ava frowned, confused, but waited for him to continue. "Andy, what do you mean?" she asked, now visibly worried. Andrew felt the weight of his decision pressing on his chest, but there was no turning back now. "My name isn't really Andy. I mean, I am Andy, but I'm also Andrew. Andrew Miller. I'm the owner of this hotel." Ava stayed silent. The revelation hit her like an unexpected wave. For a moment, she seemed not to comprehend what he was saying, and then her eyes widened as if the truth finally sank in. "What do you mean?" she whispered in disbelief. You own the hotel?" Andrew nodded, feeling the weight of the confession. He wanted to explain everything, but Ava took a step back, shock written all over her face. "I disguised myself as an employee to better understand the lives of the people who work here. I wanted to distance myself from my world and see things from another perspective. When I met you, I started falling in love with you, and the secret became harder and harder to keep." Ava stood frozen, trying to process everything. Andrew's words echoed in her mind, and she looked at him as if seeing a stranger. "You lied to me this whole time?" she asked, her voice trembling. Everything we went through was a lie?" Andrew stepped forward, desperate to explain. "No, Ava. What I feel for you is real. None of that was a lie, but I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I was afraid of losing you." Ava shook her head, still in disbelief. Tears began to form in her eyes. "You lied to me, Andy. I trusted you." And with that, she turned and ran, leaving Andrew standing there, alone, his heart shattered. Andrew stood frozen in the hotel lobby, watching Ava walk farther and farther away. The sound of her hurried footsteps echoed through the empty space, while the truth he had so feared to reveal finally hit him. The look of pain and disbelief on her face haunted him as he tried to process what had just happened. It was as if an enormous weight had fallen on him, crushing any hope he had of earning her forgiveness. He wasn't sure if he should go after her. The truth, raw and unfiltered, was now out, and maybe the best thing to do was give Ava space to process it all. Andrew wanted to explain, wanted to beg for a chance to show that, despite the lie, what he felt for her was real. But deep down, he knew Ava needed time. After what felt like an eternity, he turned and slowly walked toward the elevator, heading to the floor where his secret office was located. Every step felt heavier than the last. As he entered his office, Andrew collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. There, surrounded by business documents and contracts, the weight of his decision fell on him like a suffocating cloak. He had lied to Ava, the woman he had fallen in love with, the only person who had sparked a genuine feeling in him since Elisa's death. And now, he had lost the right to be by her side. The office, usually a symbol of his authority, now felt tight and gloomy, like a prison built from his own mistakes. Meanwhile, Ava ran through the quiet streets of Brooksville, tears streaming down her face as the cold night wind blew. She didn't know where she was going, only that she needed to get away from everything, away from the lie that Andrew Miller, had told her. "The owner of the hotel," she repeated to herself, as if the words didn't make sense. The man she had come to trust, who had seemed genuine, simple, and willing to listen, wasn't who she thought he was. He wasn't the humble employee fixing the hotel's problems. He was the owner of everything. The revelation brought up a mix of feelings she didn't yet know how to handle. There was anger, betrayal, and at the same time, a deep sense of emptiness. Ava couldn't believe that Andrew had infiltrated her life in such a way, lying about who he really was. She had trusted him, shared her fears and hopes, and now it all felt like a farce. Eventually, she found herself in front of the small house where she lived with her mother. Her home, always modest, now seemed even more fragile, almost a reflection of how she felt inside. Ava entered, wiping her tears, and found her mother asleep on the couch. Looking at her, The exhaustion she had felt for so long now seemed even heavier. Ava sighed, unsure of how to move forward. Noah was in the kitchen, standing with a glass of water in hand, and noticed his sister's state as soon as she walked in. "Ava, what happened?" he asked, concerned, seeing her tear-streaked face. She shook her head, trying to hold back more tears that insisted on falling. She didn't know where to start. How could she explain that the man she had been getting close to and trusting had lied about everything? Andrew. Ava began, struggling to find the words, but the anger in her voice came through. "He isn't who we thought he was, Noah. He's the owner of the hotel. He lied to me, to all of us. He pretended to be someone else. The entire time." Noah frowned, processing the information. He had suspected something, especially after the debts to the gang had disappeared so suddenly. But he hadn't expected this revelation. "What? He owns the hotel?" Noah repeated in disbelief. "So he's the one who helped with my problem?" Ava looked at her brother, perplexed. "He helped? What do you mean?" Noah hesitated for a moment before continuing. "I suspected, but now it makes sense. Andrew, he must have paid off my debt. Somehow he used his money to get me out of this. I didn't understand it at the time, but now it all adds up." Ava stared at him, shocked. It was true that Noah had seemed more at ease in recent days, but she never imagined Andrew was involved so directly. Knowing this left her even more confused. Yes, he had lied, but he had also helped Noah. He had solved the problem that had been consuming her, which gave her a sense of relief she didn't want to feel. "Did he pay off your debt?" Ava whispered, her emotions now even more tangled. "Why would he do that? Why didn't he tell me?" Noah shrugged, unsure how to respond. "Maybe because he really cares about you, Ava. Or maybe because he was trying to fix things before you found out who he really was." Noah hesitated for a second, noticing his sister's pain. "I know he lied, and I'm not defending that. But for some reason, he did something few people would do. He solved my problem without asking for anything in return." Ava sat down at the small kitchen table, still in shock. Noah was right, and that made everything even more confusing. Andrew had lied, yes, but he had also sacrificed something to help them. It didn't erase the betrayal, but it wasn't as simple as she wanted to believe either. Still, the pain of the lie remained. He had inserted himself into her life without revealing who he really was, and that hurt more than anything else. "I need time to figure this out, Noah," she finally said. "I just need space." Noah nodded, respecting his sister's pain. He knew it was a complicated situation, and only Ava could decide how to handle it. He wasn't sure she could ever forgive Andrew, but he knew she needed to process what she had discovered before making any decisions. Meanwhile, Andrew spent the night wide awake, sitting in the same office where he managed his business decisions. But this time, nothing in the business world seemed to matter. He had made a terrible mistake, and now he had to face the consequences. The hours passed slowly, and as the sun began to rise on the horizon, Andrew knew he needed to find a way to fix things. He couldn't just leave it like this. He loved Ava, and even if she never forgave him, he had to try. He knew she deserved more than just apologies. She needed a real gesture, something that showed he was willing to change, willing to be honest and vulnerable, and above all, willing to fight for what he felt for her. With the sunrise lighting up the coast of Brooksville, Andrew stood up, determined. The only thing he knew was that he couldn't give up without fighting for Ava. She was the one person who had given his life new meaning, and he couldn't let her go without at least trying to fix what he had broken. Andrew spent the day searching for a way to make up for his mistake, but no matter how much he thought, the words never seemed enough to undo the pain he had caused. He knew that apologies wouldn't be enough to regain Ava's trust. She was a strong woman who had fought for everything she had, and he had betrayed that trust with a lie that now consumed him. That evening, Andrew decided to go to Ava's house. He knew he needed to face her, to hear what she had to say, and above all, to be honest, for the first time since everything began. With a heavy heart, he walked to the small house on the outskirts of Brooksville, where the dim porch lights illuminated the path. He paused for a moment in front of the door, gathering the courage for what he was about to do. Taking a deep breath, he knocked on the door. He heard soft footsteps on the other side, and his heart raced. The door opened slowly, revealing Ava, her expression a mix of surprise and reluctance. Her eyes looked tired, as if she hadn't slept since the revelation. She stood in silence, just staring at him, waiting for him to speak. "Ava," Andrew began, his voice low and hesitant. "I know I'm the last person you want to see right now, but I need to talk to you. I need to explain why I did all of this, even if you never want to see me again after this." Ava crossed her arms, a defensive barrier. She didn't invite him in, But she didn't close the door in his face either. Her silence was an invitation for him to continue, despite the hurt. "When I started working at the hotel, I never intended to deceive you." Andrew paused, trying to find the right words. "I was lost. Since my wife died, my life lost its meaning. The money, the power, none of it made me happy. I felt like everything around me was fake, that people were only with me because of my wealth, and I needed to reconnect with something real. I wanted to understand the lives of the people who work at my hotel, the people who live without the privileges I've always had." Ava remained silent, her face expressionless, but her eyes were fixed on him, listening to every word. "When I met you," Andrew continued, his voice cracking slightly, "something changed. You were different from everyone I knew. You're strong, determined, and even with all the challenges you face, you never stop fighting, and that's what drew me to you. But as time went on, I got too close. I started to fall for you, Ava, and then the weight of my lie became unbearable. I didn't know how to tell the truth without losing you." Tears began to shimmer in Ava's eyes under the dim porch light. Andrew knew that every word was hitting deep, but he also knew it didn't erase the mistake he had made. "You lied to me," she finally said, her voice trembling but firm. "Everything we shared, every conversation, every moment, was based on a lie. How can I trust someone who hid something so important from me?" Andrew felt the impact of her words like a knife. She was right, and he knew it. How could she trust him after everything? "I know I can't change what I did, and I'm not asking you to forgive me right now," he replied, struggling to keep his voice steady. "I just want you to know that nothing I felt for you was a lie. What I did was wrong, and you have every right to be angry. But I would do anything to earn your trust again." Ava looked at him for a long moment, the tears finally falling from her eyes. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Andrew," she said, finally releasing the weight she had been carrying. "I trusted you. I opened up to you about my life, my family, about Noah. You knew all of that, and yet you kept deceiving me. It's not something I can easily forget." Andrew lowered his head, crushed by guilt. "I know," he whispered, "and I'll understand if you never want to forgive me. But I want you to know that I'm here. I'm not pretending anymore. If you ever want to talk to me, for real, without lies, I'll be here." Ava took a deep breath, trying to control the emotions overwhelming her. She knew Andrew was being sincere now, but the damage was already done. The pain of the betrayal was still too fresh, and she didn't know how to handle it. "I need time, Andrew," she said, wiping her tears. "I need to think, to understand what all of this means. I can't just forgive you overnight." Andrew nodded, respecting the space she was asking for. "I understand, Ava, and I'll wait, as long as it takes." He took a step back, giving her the distance she clearly wanted, and turned to leave. Andrew's heart was heavy, but at least he knew he had finally been honest, and that was all he could do at that moment. As he walked away, Ava stood in the doorway, watching him disappear into the night. The conflicting emotions inside her left her exhausted. Part of her was still furious, hurt by the lie, but another part, small and quiet, acknowledged the sacrifice Andrew had made for Noah, never seeking recognition for it. She knew he had made a mistake, but she also knew the love she felt for him wouldn't just disappear overnight. Ava needed time to figure out how to move forward, with or without Andrew Miller in her life. The next day, the hotel had a calmer pace. Andrew continued working as usual, but now with a sense of transparency. He had revealed his truth to Ava, and although the pain of rejection was still strong, he knew he had at least been honest. Abigail, as always, was attentive to details, and when she crossed paths with Andrew in the hallways, she couldn't help but make a comment. "So, you finally told her?" she asked, with a hint of curiosity. Andrew nodded, without much energy. "I did. And she said she needs time. I don't know if she'll ever forgive me, but at least she knows the truth now." Abigail observed him for a moment, her eyes soft but perceptive. "Well, from what I know of Ava, she's not someone who makes hasty decisions. If she asked for time, maybe there's still hope." Andrew wanted to believe that, but he knew the process would be long. He had broken something valuable, Ava's trust, and he knew regaining it would take time, if it was even possible. In the days that followed, Andrew focused on work, avoiding putting pressure on Ava, but always available if she wanted to talk. He knew he couldn't force forgiveness. All he could do was wait and prove, through his actions, that he was willing to be a better person, someone worthy of her trust. Meanwhile, Ava wrestled with her own feelings. Every time she saw him at the hotel, she felt a whirlwind of emotions. Part of her wanted to pull away, forget him, and move on. But another part, the part that couldn't forget the man who had helped her in her hardest moments, hesitated. She knew the love she felt for Andrew was still there, buried beneath the pain of betrayal. The question was, could she forgive him and start over? Or had his lie broken something that could never be repaired? The days that followed were a true test of patience and resilience for Andrew. Every encounter with Ava at the hotel was filled with silent tension, and although they exchanged few words, her looks conveyed the pain and confusion still boiling inside her. Andrew knew he couldn't rush things. Ava had asked for time, and he was willing to give her the space she needed. However, the emptiness he felt every time he saw her without being able to truly approach her was almost unbearable. As for Ava, she struggled with the storm of feelings consuming her. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't ignore the fact that, even after everything, a part of her still loved Andrew. But the wound of betrayal was still open, and she didn't know how to reconcile the love she felt with the pain the lie had caused. The image of Andrew, kneeling next to her, fixing problems at the hotel, seemed so distant now, almost like an illusion. The man she knew wasn't Andy, the humble employee. He was Andrew Miller, the millionaire heir to an empire. One particularly calm afternoon, as Ava worked at the reception, Noah appeared. He had been more stable in recent days, which had given her a sense of peace she desperately needed. But when he approached, there was something in his eyes, a determination Ava wasn't used to seeing in her younger brother. "Hey, Ava, do you have a minute?" Noah asked, sitting in the chair in front of the reception desk. Ava nodded, without taking her eyes off the computer screen. "Sure. What's up?" Noah hesitated, running his hands through his hair as if trying to find the right words. "It's about Andrew," he finally said. The name brought a wave of emotions over Ava, who closed her eyes for a second, taking a deep breath. "Noah, I don't know if I want to talk about this right now," she replied, trying to avoid the subject, which was still an open wound. But Noah shook his head, insisting. "I know he lied, and I know you're hurt, but I need to say this, Ava. He helped me when no one else could. If he hadn't paid off my debt to that gang, I don't know where we'd be right now. He saved my life, and I think you need to know that he did it because he cares about you. I know lying was wrong, but I think he deserves a second chance." Ava remained silent, listening to her brother's words echoing in her mind. She knew that Andrew had done something extraordinary for Noah, and that tormented her even more. How could someone who cared so much about her also have betrayed her like that? The dilemma in her heart seemed to grow by the second, and she didn't know how to find her way out of this emotional maze. "I understand, Noah," she said after a long sigh. "And I know he helped you, and for that I'm grateful. But it doesn't change the fact that he lied to me. How can I trust him again?" Noah nodded, understanding the weight of the question. "I don't have an answer for that, Ava. I just think that sometimes people make mistakes. Big mistakes. But if there's a chance to forgive, maybe it's worth trying. I don't want you to lose someone who truly loves you because of something he did while trying to protect the truth. Think about it." Ava looked at her brother, feeling the sincerity in his words. Noah had always been a difficult kid, full of flaws and missteps, but now he seemed more mature, as if he were trying to help her find her way. Even so, forgiveness was a complicated thing, especially when the heart was so hurt. That night, Ava couldn't sleep. Noah's words swirled in her mind. She felt torn between the pain Andrew had caused and the gratitude for how he had helped Noah, expecting nothing in return. More than that, she knew that despite everything, she still had feelings for him. But was it possible to trust him again? Was it possible to start over with someone who had lied about something so fundamental? The next morning, Ava decided she needed clarity. She couldn't remain trapped in these conflicting emotions without at least confronting Andrew one last time. So, at the end of her shift at the hotel, she went to the small office he usually used to handle his business discreetly. She took a deep breath and knocked on the door. "Come in," came Andrew's low, tired voice from the other side. When Ava opened the door and entered, she saw Andrew sitting at the desk, his eyes fixed on a document he didn't seem to be really reading. As soon as he saw her, he stood up immediately. Surprise and nervousness reflected on his face. "Ava," he began, his voice laden with uncertainty. She raised her hand, signaling for him not to speak yet. "I need to talk," she said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the emotions bubbling up inside her chest. "I've been thinking a lot these past few days. About everything that happened. About the lie. About you. And about me. I'm not going to deny that I'm hurt. The trust I had in you was broken in a way I never imagined." But she paused, struggling to organize her thoughts. "But I also know you helped Noah without expecting anything in return. And that tells me something about who you really are." Andrew watched her closely, absorbing every word carefully, not wanting to interrupt her. "I'm not going to lie, Andrew. I don't know if I can fully forgive you, at least not right now, but I also can't ignore what I feel for you. What we had was real, even with the lie. And part of me wants to believe we can get past this. Andrew took a step forward, his eyes filled with hope and regret. Ava, I would do anything to earn your trust back. I made a terrible mistake. And if I could go back, I would have told you the truth from the start. But what I feel for you is real. And if you give me a chance, I'll prove that I can be the man you deserve. With no lies, no secrets. Ava looked at him, her feelings in conflict. Part of her wanted to pull away, to avoid the possibility of more pain. But another part, stronger, wanted to try. Maybe forgiveness wouldn't come immediately. But she knew Andrew was willing to fight for it, for her. I'll give you a chance, Andrew, she said finally. But it will take time. I need you to understand that. Andrew nodded, his heart relieved. I understand, Ava. And I'm willing to wait as long as it takes. I just want to be honest with you from now on, in every way. She gave a small smile, still uncertain, but with a hint of hope. The path to reconciliation wouldn't be easy, and complete forgiveness still felt distant, but the first step had been taken. Andrew wasn't perfect, and she knew he had made a grave mistake. However, she also knew that if there was a chance to rebuild what they had, it was worth trying. The two remained silent for a moment, the weight of the conversation still hanging in the air. But something new was also present, a spark of hope. I think we can start over, Ava finally said, her voice soft. Andrew smiled, a genuine smile of relief and gratitude. Thank you, Ava. I won't let you down. Night fell over Brooksville, and though the road ahead was long, both Andrew and Ava knew they were taking the first steps toward an uncertain but promising future. There was much to rebuild, but the love they had discovered in each other would be the foundation to start again. The sun was slowly setting over Brooksville, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange that reflected on the calm ocean waters. A gentle breeze blew, carrying the sound of waves softly crashing onto the shore. Sitting side by side on one of the benches on the hotel veranda, Andrew and Ava watched the scene with peaceful smiles on their faces. Months had passed since the day Andrew revealed the truth about his identity, and though the road to reconciliation had not been easy, each challenge they overcame had strengthened their connection. Little by little, Ava had learned to trust him again, and Andrew, in turn, had fully committed to proving that his love was true and free of secrets. Ava glanced sideways at Andrew, her soft smile lighting up her face. He seemed different now. Although he was still the hotel owner and heir to an immense fortune, something in his essence had changed. Andrew was lighter, simpler, as if he had finally found what he was searching for in that impulsive decision to disguise himself as an employee. He had found what money could never buy, a genuine purpose and true love. What are you thinking about? Ava asked with a playful smile, leaning in closer to him. Andrew, who had been gazing at the sea, turned his attention to her and smiled. I was thinking about how all of this has changed my life. He took Ava's hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. A year ago, I was lost, not knowing who I really was, trying to find something real. And now, I'm here, with you, happier than I ever imagined I could be. Ava smiled, squeezing his hand affectionately. I'm happy too, Andrew. We've been through so much, but today I feel like we're exactly where we're supposed to be. Andrew gently pulled her closer, wrapping her in his arms as they continued to admire the sunset. The warmth of his embrace, the comfort of that moment, was everything Ava had ever wanted. Someone who was by her side, not because of his wealth or status, but because he loved her deeply for who she was. You know, Andrew said, breaking the silence with a playful tone, I've been thinking about something. What? Ava asked, curious, looking up at him. Maybe it's time to make this official, he said, a playful sparkle in his eyes. What do you think about making this partnership permanent? Ava laughed, shaking her head, but her heart raced as she realized what he was implying. Andrew Miller, are you trying to propose without even a ring? She teased, raising an eyebrow. Andrew laughed, raising his hands in surrender. Well, if that's the issue, I've had a ring in my pocket for a while now. He pulled out a small, delicate ring with a sparkling stone that reflected the colors of the sunset. I was waiting for the right moment, but now feels like the perfect time. Ava was speechless for a moment, surprised and emotional. Andrew knelt before her, the ring in his hands, his eyes reflecting the love and hope he felt. Ava Anderson, you are everything I've ever searched for, even without knowing it. I love you with all my heart, and I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me? Ava felt tears welling up in her eyes, but this time, they were tears of pure happiness. She smiled, feeling the warmth of the moment flood her heart, and nodded. "Yes, Andrew, I want to marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and the two kissed beneath the colorful sky of Brooksville, with the sound of the waves bearing witness to that magical moment. Andrew had found his redemption, and Ava, her true love. They had overcome lies, heartache, and obstacles. But what prevailed was their desire to build something real, something solid, based on the love they shared. The hotel, once just a symbol of wealth and status, now represented something far more important. The place where their lives had crossed paths, where they had fallen in love, and where, together, they had restarted their journeys. As the sun disappeared over the horizon, Andrew and Ava knew that the future would still bring challenges, but with love and trust, they were ready to face them. Hand in hand, they would continue building a life together, a life full of truth, love, and happiness. And so ends the journey of Andrew and Ava, showing that, despite the obstacles and mistakes of the past, true love can prevail. If this story moved you, don't forget to like and share your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel to follow more heartwarming stories we bring almost every day. Click the links that are now appearing on the screen to check out more stories that will warm your heart. We'll see you next time.